Hello, good afternoon everybody. My topic for the keynote speech is, of course, new challenges to tourism, especially with regard to COVID-19. And I'm sure that it will not be a surprise for you that the most devastating consequences for the global economy was especially relevant for the tourism industry. If we look globally, the tourism industry was cut in 72% in 2001 in comparison to 2019. The most eaten region was Asia and the Pacific, which was specifically damaged from the COVID-19. As you can see, this is this unprecedented crisis. Yes, the world has not seen such a crisis in the tourism industry, even not in the global economic crisis of 2009 or the SARS epidemic. Yes, this is a completely new ballgame. Here you can see the impact of COVID-19 on the global tourism industry. In numbers, in 2019 we had 1.5 billion global tourists, and in 2020 only 400 million, and we're just only starting to recovering from that. So we saw steep decrease in the travel and tourism industry, which is a dominant contributor to the service industry, which is another demonstration that the tourism industry is a fantastic industry, yes, with a lot of fun and entertainment and job creation and a great contributor to the economy, but it's also a very vulnerable industry. And why is this happened? Why the COVID-19 hurt the tourism industry so much and so brutal? So what was the key reason for this? Is this because people are afraid to travel, or because what is the main what is the main factor that caused these devastating effects on the tourism industry? The most severe hit occurred in 2020, with the peak of the worldwide travel bans and restrictions on mobility. The government decided, right, to stop our mobility between countries and between destinations, and the tourism industry, in a minute, in a second, ceased to exist. So travel bans and mobility restrictions are the main factor for this huge crisis that we saw. And the rationale behind these travel bans and restrictions on mobility is that travel play a significant role in the spread of the virus. Right? And we need to minimize the spread and control the in order to control the transmission rate in community and between communities. However, in reality, now when we are in 2022, and we can examine the entire spectrum of research on this issue, we can come to a very sad conclusion. And the conclusion is that travel restrictions have very little effect on the spread of the virus. And if it has some good, some positive aspects, positive consequences, it's only for the short term. For the long term, it's basically almost useless. We can see that, for example, the failure of Australia and New Zealand as studies in point. These countries were praised, right, for stopping the virus from entering their countries, because they had harsh restrictions and very tough travel bans. However, in a minute that these restrictions were lifted, the virus entered and the experience is really, really harsh, both Australia and New Zealand. In October 2020, a study that was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association came to a conclusion the risk of contracting COVID-19 during air travel is lower than from an office building, classroom, supermarkets, or just taking a train. This is with regard to the claims that air travel is dangerous because people are crowded in very small places, right? And they can spread the virus more easily. Another study, more recently, in the studies in applied economics, came to very similar conclusions that the lockdowns in Europe and the United States, yes, they did reduce to some part COVID-19 mortality, but in terms of percentages, here we're talking about a very, very modest, if any, effect. So the conclusion in this study is that no evidence exists that lockdowns, school closures, border closures, other limiting gathering have any noticeable effects on COVID-19 mortality, and lockdowns policy are ill-founded and should be rejected as the pandemic policy instruments. We have other unintended consequences of travel ban policy. First of all, if I'm banned to travel anyway, then where is my incentive to get vaccinated? Right? If I'm stay at home anyway, if I'm sheltering at home, if I'm oppressed, if my mobility is being restricted, then okay, I'll stay at home and that's it. If you want people to get vaccinated, and we do want to. I'm not a corona denier. Yeah? I'm not denying that corona is a risky virus, yeah, and we should deal with it with open-minded. But the facts that now in 2022, we're much smarter, and we can understand that it's only holding us back from getting to normal life. It provides incentive for countries to hide cases of new variants. If I know that my country will get a travel bans from other country, then maybe I should hide the new cases of new variants. So in order for other countries not to impose travel bans on my citizens. It also creates retaliation. Yeah, if you put travel bans on citizens from one country, right, these countries are getting upset and they impose travel bans on that country, yes, it creates really bad influence regarding to foreign policy. And it's also, and I think that's the most important issue, it creates tragic consequences for individuals and families. Families are being torn apart, we're not able to meet each other for almost 2 years, and it still continues. People could not attend their parents' funerals or attending other significant others special events. And of course, we are talking about the freedom variant. We cannot talk about travel bans without emphasizing the dangerous infringement on the freedom to travel. And the fact that the controls on our movements is being normalized. The next time, right, the government will have it will be much easier for government to impose travel bans and other restrictions on our mobility and freedom to travel. It created a very, very risky situation that we need to be aware of. And toward the end, in the last, I also want to talk, of course, not just about the negative aspects, but also about maybe the positive aspect, or at least the optimistic view for the tourism industry after COVID-19. And we saw that the tourism industry indeed hurts really bad, but it also has the ability to adapt and adjust and finding new innovative way to rediscover itself. We saw, for example, very interesting trends, such as that travelers go to staycations. They stay at home, but they go and explore, right, their own surroundings. That was very interesting and very hard, very emotional discoveries. You can have good time even when you're staying at home or very close to home. You don't have to go to Hawaii, right, or Australia. You have some very nice spots very close to your home country. So there is also a quest for open air experiences. People don't want to, right, to be crowded. They want to go to and explore the countryside. So they take the cars and just travel and finding new places. There is also an increase in spending per trip and longer stays. We saw emphasis and request for sustainable vacation, authentic vacation, and experience the local aspects of the destination. People want to come to Vienna, but they don't want to see only the mega attractions in Vienna, the regular attractions, the must-see spots. They want to explore the people. They want to meet the people of Vienna and understand how did they deal with the corona, how their life was impacted by this. What do they do? In other words, they want more authentic vacations. And people also feel that, maybe the end is close, right? Maybe the apocalyptic notions, right, will come true. So I need to experience. I need to find myself. So we see a lot of experiential traveling. Of course, after more than 2 years, right, of separations, of isolation, we see more quest for family reunion, of friendcation, not traveling and then meet friends on the way. Traveling, right, to stay with your friends, to appreciate the friendship and family again. And another very interesting development is that after a very long time that we saw travel agencies disappear, we see a renewed demand for travel agents. I must say that it's very confusing to travel nowadays. Where do I need to wear mask, right? Where do I need to show a vaccination? So we have agreed that they take care of everything here. But it's very confusing, and travel agents is very useful nowadays. So we see comeback, very interesting comeback for a travel agent. So with that in mind, I will put a
Thank you for your presentation. I now want to introduce our two other panel members. The first one is Susanne Kraus-Winkler. Susanne Kraus-Winkler is an entrepreneur and industry representative in the hospitality industry. She is even the president of the Austrian Professional Hotel Association within the Chamber of Commerce. She has 40 years of experience in the hotel and the restaurant business, as well as in the industry consulting or in the tourism consulting and the academic lecturing. And she's founding partner of LOISIUM Wine and Spa Resort. Peter Pscheidl was the representative to the European Union of the Austrian Insurance Association and also served as a deputy member of the executive committee of the European Insurance and Reinsurance Federation, Insurance Europe. And currently he works as the head of European affairs of the Vienna Insurance Group. Please join us. Okay, may I ask Susanne for her take?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me. We already heard a lot of interesting points about tourism. I would like to start a little bit about the biggest challenges since Corona started from my point of view. And of course also talking about changes from my point of view, more or less adding what you already said, adding a few points to that. So first of all, you already mentioned the travel restrictions and lockdowns, but what was the biggest challenge out of that was because we had different timelines all over the world, and specifically also within Europe. And in Europe, we also had the problem that it was not, there were not only different national rules and regulations for travel and lockdowns, there were also regional differences. As we have now in Vienna, you might know, for those of you who are living in Vienna, that the rules in Vienna are still different than the rules all over Austria. And right now we are waiting for the next directive of the Austrian government, because the other one is ending on Friday, and we still don't have the new one, which will again have changes, and Vienna will again change things. So this is the first big problem which we face. I just recognized two guests from the US at the Schwarze Kamel, which is a very well-known restaurant, and they had to leave the restaurant because they only had the PCR test, which was for the border crossing necessary, but not for going into restaurant. So this is really a mess still in Europe. You know maybe how long we needed to get the green pass all over Europe. And now we have the next mess because green pass will have different delivery dates, or ending dates. So this is one of the biggest challenges right now for tourism. But the whole thing was also a turbo for new developments, like digitalization. It was also already meant, but also a tipping and turning point for unsolved cooking problems in our industry, like the lack of skilled and unskilled labor, and I will come to this a little bit later with one sentence too. And of course the geopolitical situation right now. I don't want to mention the Ukraine-Russian war, because this is not is very difficult right now, but it is again a mess for tourism, of course. It became a major threat for all over Europe, because, for instance, US, they consider Europe as a war zone, and a lot of people are not knowing if they could travel to Europe. Also, I can tell you, Italy is full of US tourists right now. We also think that this threat has quite a lot of worldwide changes of our common economic system and our common economic understandings, which we built and relied on during the last 50 years. I personally feel, and I read this also in many of my newsletters, which I'm reading every day, that we are in a transition period for tourism right now. We will have a totally different structure in the Western world, from my understanding, with huge impact on tourism as we understood it until 2019. And when I talk to colleagues and experts, we say we might in the future talk about tours before 2019 and the time after 2020 or 2021. So besides the many question marks and uncertainties which we have about the developments within Europe, but also all over the world, we can already see that the society is changing. We have still a big travel lust, or wanderlust, as you explained to us, but we have extremely changing travel patterns to be foreseen for the future. Then we have, of course, the high inflation rates, even recession is possible. We might have no constant economic growth. There were already several reasons said today. And we don't have a total free movement, because imagine what was cut off because of the geopolitical problem right now of what was usually a big area of travel. Even the cruise cruise ships went to those areas. So there is a huge change in everything, and specifically in the free movement. And we have a totally new understanding of work and the willingness to work in general in the Western world. And this causes a huge problem in tourism because we are a service industry and we need physical people on the spot. We cannot say go do things like this and that for homework. We need the cooks, we need the servants, we need the receptionists, we need everyone on the spot. And this 24/7 means every day and very often also 365 days a year. So, and we see that there is a lack of work, chances and food in the development countries. How crazy is this? The world is in a way split. There's a huge gap between those different areas in the world. Those who are lacking work and the others who don't want to work anymore, and we are lacking people to work. So I don't know where this will end, how we will solve those problems, but you are the experts for that. And even with sustainability and ESG targets, the world is split in a way it acts. So I don't know how we will solve this problem, because green inflation was already mentioned today, which is, by the way, a huge problem for hotels because we are equity intensive, investment intensive, and we are also energy intensive, not as much as the industry production companies, but still with Vienna and all the other thermal hotels, we are quite energy intensive. So I don't know where this will end. And if energy becomes a limited resource, I don't know how tourism will be affected again. So we are talking already, do we have contingency plans if there is no gas coming all of a sudden from Russia? Do we have to close the hotels then immediately, or what does this mean? Because households and industry will be the first to get the rest of the gas, and what does this mean again? So this is one of the uncertainties which we have to deal with. So talking about the changes in tourism, it's mainly predictions and assumptions. And by the way, you said positive, of course, only for those who survive. Leisure, business and leisure, we already heard it also from your side. Then working from everywhere, but mostly from home, changing the way families behave at home. You must imagine if you're sitting at home and working at home, what does this mean for your family, the atmosphere at home? Divorce rate, the way you raise your children at home. Know they are not used to seeing you all the time working at home. So this has a big influence also on the way you behave at home. Then we know already that there will be less business travel. The predictions vary between 24 up to 40% less business travel, including conferences and fairs. How will fairs look like in the future? Will we attend those metaverse and avatars? Will they take over? AI definitely will have an impact on our industry. Then there are different expectations from leisure destinations and leisure hotels. And of course, different way to consume food and to produce food, because there are already a lot of things with 3D printers. We will have more digitalized individual services. Are there better than the humans in future? Then, of course, the future of travel. This is a huge thing. E-cars, solar cars, or hydrogen cars. Travel has still limited possibilities. Not every train often covers the travel needs. Try to go from Innsbruck to Florence. It's you're quicker if you walk. While will flying become again exclusive and expensive? And how will an open world for travel look like? Will there be less intercontinental travel in the future, or more intra-continental travel as with COVID? Look at the recovery regions in the world. The US and China recovered much quicker. First of all, because of the way they handle they are huge economies with many people, and therefore the intercontinental travel started in a totally new way. So this was my short overview. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you very much. Very warm welcome from my side. Very good afternoon. Now looking back at COVID-19 and its impact on tourism, on travel, from an insurer's perspective, I may split my intervention maybe in three parts. Looking back, looking at the present, and then also looking into the future as far as possible. Now, looking back is whenever you travel by plane, by train, by car, or by ship, you always have to be insured. That's the fantastic thing about insurance. So without insurance, you're not allowed to drive, to fly, to ship, or to do whatever. Now, just imagine a world where nobody's driving, there are no planes flying, there are no ships, you have no risk. And this is paradise for insurers. So during a very short period, when travel was really down, we saw that also in our claims balance sheets, a very positive impact on insurance. Yeah? We have to say this in all honesty. Because if nothing's moving, there is no risk, there are no claims, so we don't have to pay. So great situation, but for a very short time only. Yeah? Because what we suddenly saw then, after a few weeks and months in 2020, that people were afraid when coming back to work to take public transport. Public transport, that's where you travel with the coronavirus. That's what we've been told. So therefore, we saw an increase in individual mobility. When traveling to the office, you prefer to take your car instead of the train or the subway or whatsoever. So all of a sudden, we saw an increase in local circulation, and we also saw that in our balance sheets. And also maybe to put it a bit in relation, people did not travel, they stayed at home, so holiday at home. We saw an increase in accidents at home, because men like myself were staying at home, and then when you go in your apartment, you see a lot of things that were waiting to be fixed, that you always wanted to fix, but now you had time during that lockdown to do it. So we also saw an increase of claims of accidents at home. So these are some of the side effects of Corona, of less tourism, etc. But this was a bit the present, but now looking into the future, and thank you, Susanne, for mentioning also ESG. I'm also heading the ESG department here at VIG. And this is a very important topic to us. We've been told now after, I don't know if he was allowed to say after Corona, so let's say now, getting back to normal, looking into new ways of mobility, how to travel, etc. There was the saying also in Brussels, where I have the pleasure to be one or the other time. Now, or this time, we'll do it differently. So we will not get back to what we've done before. We'll have to find new ways of traveling. There was, Barbara mentioned the huge investments that were also made by purchasing programs, etc. So a lot of the money was flowing into green technologies, etc., etc., etc. So the question we ask ourselves as insurers, what will be the mobility of tomorrow? How will that look like when you travel? Because in all honesty, I took it as a very positive point from you, Amir, that spending holidays next door is something attractive, particularly in Vienna, I have to admit, as a Viennese, yeah, that's true. But from time to time you want to travel somewhere that is maybe a bit more distant. So therefore you will have to take one or the other means of transport. And there we are told now by the European Union, it's a Green Deal that was presented some years ago and it's reinforced over time. We have to think of new ways of transportation. And what we think also as insurers is, yeah, that's a fine idea, but how do alternatives look like? It was mentioned, I really like that, when you go to, I think it was Florence or wherever, how much time it takes. And another example would be just going from Vienna to Berlin by train. It takes these days, it takes you 9 hours. 9 hours from Vienna via Brno, Prague, Dresden to Berlin. Now the good news is there are some projects underway. The Via Vidovna, very interesting. The project was titled like that because just a small part of this project is actually located in Austria. But once this new railway will be realized in 2030, so we still have some time to go, this travel time, the 9 hours from Vienna to Berlin, will be cut by more than half. So in 4 hours, you will be able to travel from Vienna to Berlin. You can travel then in 2 hours from Vienna to Prague. Currently it takes me 4 hours and 30 minutes to go by train. And we have very important operations in Czech Republic. So we go there from time to time. So what I just want to illustrate with that example, thinking of alternatives that are environment friendly or let's say more sustainable, that's certainly a very interesting one, but I think we should be realistic. This takes first a lot of time, planning such railways, etc. Secondly, you need a lot of parties that are committed to that. Even the Via Vidovna is a very difficult project because it's, has to reunite Austria, Czech Republic, Germany, etc. So there are a lot of challenges going in that direction. For sure, we see some future in that. Also as insurers, as investors, we are also investing in high-speed trains. Currently, we are co-financed part of the TGV in France between Tours and Bordeaux. So when you sit in the train, think of us, we finance part of it. So we try to play our role in all that, in this sustainable mobility, sustainable travel, sustainable tourism. But it comes along with a lot of challenges, and I think we should be realistic. It's very time-consuming, and you have to overcome also a lot of barriers, also from the political side. So that would be it for the short-term intervention. Thank you.
Thank you. As we are already pretty far on time, let me open the panel directly for questions. Are there any?
Amir, which policy would you have recommended, and which policy would you recommend or will you recommend for the next autumn, when the next wave is being foreseen? Because I understand that you have a very, very different idea of what should have done.
I think that I'm not a physician or a doctor, but however, I think that from reading relevant research regarding travel bans and other mobility restriction, there might be some effectiveness to it, but only for the short term, only for just to examine what can be done and just to organize and recruit healthcare professionals. But after that, it's no longer effective. Once the virus or the variant enters the country, it will spread. Humanity, civilization knew much. We knew pandemics before. And we know that even before the invention of the plane and the trains, the viruses, and all these plagues and pandemics, they went everywhere, all over the world. Maybe it took a few years, but it happens. So we need to live with that. I think
So that is your answer. You have to live with it.
Exactly. You need to live. Yes, exactly. You need to live with the pandemic. You need to exercise self-responsibility. You need to protect the elders if it serves them the most. You need to be cautious, but to impose such a draconian restrictions that create much more damage than utility, I think we should not come back to this kind of policy.
Thank you. Other questions? Please.
My wife is a tour guide, and she and I, we founded a tour consultancy company on the 13th of March 2020. So we really choose the perfect date. We had our challenges, but we really we found also promising developments, like the people that wanted to explore Vienna. We have got we relied very much on American tourists before. Now we have a lot of visitors from Germany and from Austria that want to explore their home city and their home surroundings. So you could find the chances in the developments of the last 2 years. What I hope is not coming back, and what I see the tendency that the mass tourism, the big groups, I think will not come back, that people are traveling in smaller groups, just families. And as you mentioned, they really rely on advice of either travel agents or guides in the city. So there are some positive developments if you didn't lose your courage. So there were weeks or months in 2021 when there came a lockdown again and many tours were cancelled when we were almost desperate. Another thing what I regard a little bit, I'm Advocatus Diaboli in this regard. I do not see any environmental sustainability or whatever we may call it in high-speed trains. The CO2 you will spend on all the concrete build and all the destruction of landscape will last for many, many decades before there will be a positive effect. So I mean, I think it's nice to go to Salzburg now within 2.5 hours. But from Vienna to Linz, you see nothing. So it's nice for somebody that has an appointment in Salzburg and wants to do it back in the evening. For a tourist, it was much nicer to go from Vienna to Salzburg in 3 hours and go along the Danube and see the landscape and everything. And the same is, there was just a very critical article in the Presse last Sunday about the high-speed trains in France. Nobody's happy with them there. And I think the 4 hours to Prague, if you spend 1 hour in the restaurant car and have a nice glass of wine, it's nice. Why should you go there in 2.5? I mean, you can do almost everything on the train. So I don't think it's really worthwhile. And we should. I like to travel, but we should stop destroying landscape just to get a few minutes, to be someplace in a few minutes faster.
I would like to give you some figures on the whole sustainability issue, because it's intensively discussed in Brussels. I was the president of the European Hotel and Restaurant Association, I'm right now the past president, but for instance, tourism causes 8 to 10% of all of global CO2 emissions. Long-haul flights cause 20%. And buildings cause 40% of total energy consumption and 36% of energy-related greenhouse gas emissions within the EU. 75% of the existing buildings in the EU are energy inefficient, according to the current building standards. And I think when we talk about ESG and sustainability, in a time where we are not sure if there will be enough energy in the future, we really have to be very careful with all the discussions. Of course, we have to change the buildings, and we have to, because there are big impacts on our on nature, but maybe travel itself is not the real big problem. I'm sure there will be a lot of inventions with cars within the next few years, and I'm also sure there will be changes with airplanes. By the way, as you might know, there is a big problem with getting enough pilots and staff for planes, which is getting more pressure by the problem that there are so many COVID positive employees right now. So there is less travel because of that. And I'm 100% sure that flying will be more expensive, and that people will also change their travel behavior when it comes, because of the prices, because of changes in the routes, the airline routes and destinations. There is a totally disruption in the strategies about sustainability strategies which we had before 2019 and which we might have now. So this, I really doubt that we can follow what we had on our papers before 2019 for the future.
Very shortly react to that. Yeah, fully agree on that. The Green Deal was presented actually in the middle of or shortly before the pandemic, but fully agree that we see some redesigning of the Green Deal. The pressure on the financial industry is massive from policymakers. We are, not only we, also the banking side, are seen as the ones who have to fix it. We are seen as institutional investors, that we are, of course, but we don't have the money in our bank account so that we can spend it tomorrow into some sustainable projects. We're long-term investors, and therefore we can simply shift our assets from A to B. That's a bit overlooked. But I can only subscribe to what you say. There is massive pressure on us also to, let's say, invest in certain areas, maybe high-speed trains or others, because there is a very strong political push. I don't refer to Austria, but at the European level. That should not be underestimated. And this push is coming from European politics, this push is coming from international capital markets, because the understanding of what is sustainable has somehow shifted. Not to speak about electronic mobility, that is also problematic in itself when you think of the different scopes. But just to share that with you, that the financial industries, they're somehow taken hostage to fulfill the role. And as this is called the free market roadshow, that's certainly not a free market anymore. That's something else.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we are already over time, so I have to conclude the panel here. Maybe just asking a quick question, and really asking for a quick answer, everyone. You mentioned uncertainty is a huge problem for tourism. What can governments do, one measure, to improve that problem?
For me, it's an easy answer. The government should start thinking that we must do something. We must do something. It's maybe the most riskiest argument, or thinking that you can think of.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best thing is not to intervene.
Great.
And I think that the pandemic really provided another demonstration for it. Yeah. Cognitively, it's very hard not to do something, because people are pressuring you, people want you the politician to be tough on pandemics, to show strength, right? To demonstrate to people that they're doing something. It's very easy to disappoint the citizens and tell them, Barbara mentioned before the pretense of knowledge, that we don't know what to do. there is no magic solution to the pandemic, and I think politicians have to be brave and have the courage to tell the truth to their constituents.
Something similar. Less crazy and less crazy regulations coming always at the last 5 minutes and with yo-yo effects. Yeah, they open up, they close, they open up, they close. You're getting crazy with all those.
The best way to encounter uncertainty from the outside is with certainty from the inside. So what we need is policy. That's something we don't have at the moment. We have people offer, but we need policy. That's the